Okay, so what I started with today, when we started talking about basics of table protocol, is I brought out all of the basic tools that we use. So foam roller can either be used for positioning, can be used for maybe an overstretch if you're trying to get someone in thoracic extension, you put them over a roller, move them into position. You could also use this as an actual soft tissue device. You want to roll it over somebody. All of our basic compression tools, which would mimic some sort of hand or arm motion, would be some sort of a roller device. Any of our body compression tools, right? We have 2 boomsticks and 1 of the big pain pill. These work the same, they're just not loaded. So you're gonna load them as much as you want with your personal body weight. That's all of our basic compression, okay? And once we get an idea of all the stuff that we have available, then we'll go through the specifics of protocol. Scraping tools and the cupping are not inherently dangerous tools, but if you're not comfortable using them, either ask someone to acclimate you to them or choose not to use them yet, because you should not only be able to use a tool, but you should be able to articulate to your client what the purpose is. So if you're like, oh, I don't know, I'm gonna just kind of scrape this because it's tight, it doesn't build the confidence in that person going, why is this person rubbing a big metal object against me? Or, I don't know, it looked cool on Michael Phelps, so I'm gonna put a couple on you. Help people to understand what the purpose is. And this is not necessarily the specific forum to get into the details of how to use those, but we can get into that if people are interested. Kind will also be their advocates because of the rock tape connection, that they are advocates of using the scraping tools, using the cupping, so they will be able to do some continuing edits with us as well. And then obviously we have percussion. So we have 2, correct? 3, we have the hypervolt. So we have 3 different guns. Everyone for the most part has used these, right? This is the simplest and easiest way for someone that is not a hands-on therapist to do the soft tissue modality. It is the most, for lack of a better word, professional looking tool that doesn't make it feel massaging, okay? So those are the basic tools that we can use, and we'll get into the discussion of those in that second section. Questions on any of that? I wouldn't imagine. Okay, so the number one thing that we use bread and butter wise on the table, coming from our basic concept, is we are gonna assess how somebody moves, typically. We're gonna decide whether or not we can give them passive self-mobilization, foam rolling, self-stretching, or if they're going to benefit from us at adding some sort of manual stretch or therapy. Okay. Passive stretching techniques. This is going to be a great way to prep or finish with a client. You're either helping them recover or you're helping them get ready to move. Who wants to be my guinea? They'll be my guinea. Let's have your head on that end, face up. Okay, so unless you are booking someone for an entire table session, 30 or 60 minute table session, you're typically gonna put them on the table with intention, right? Oh, you know, my back's hurting, okay, so we're gonna go through some protocol to loosen up the muscles around the back. If you are taking someone through an entire systematic stretch, like, hey, just prep them for their workout, you're gonna take them through hamstring, take them through quad, take them through adductor, that's fine too. But know the intention behind what you're trying to do on the table, okay? So, the big thing I want to present in this is, again, it's not the specifics of which stretch is going to accomplish what. It's how you are positioning yourself to make it the easiest on your body and to have it appear the most professional. All right, so the big thing is how you position yourself to the client, okay? Hamstring, glute, anything where you're bringing the leg up or across, it makes sense that you would be here, right, to the side of the table. Hamstring stretch. I can come here, glute stretch, here, okay? But the other thing is the mechanics of you. If you're gonna stretch a lot of people, you have to position yourself so that your mechanics makes it easier on your body. If Dale had really tight hamstrings and I'm just sitting there like this is straining to me. So there's a difference between allowing your body position to assist your stretch and allowing your body position to give the wrong impression to a client or an outside perspective, right? So if I come in and I'm to the side, I position myself so I have good posture, I let his leg rest against my shoulder, I'm just holding him into extension, and I can just make subtle motions leaning forward, right? I can add in that whole stretch here. Whatever angle I'm at a very comfortable position. For me, they're comfortable, everyone in the vicinity sees that as a basic stretch, right? If I come across the body, right, I'm going to always present myself tall. I don't want to get into kind of this sort of feeling. See the difference between me getting here, right, and just coming across versus me kind of being here, okay? Those are subtle nuances, but the thing is that everything is perception. So the more that I can perceive someone as professionally taking someone through a range of motion versus just getting very kind of, as Mark had said, intimate in how you, right? It's different in how I am distancing, and it's different in how I am posturing. Okay. So these are all body loaded positions, right? I'm just resting him against me. I have extension through my arm. I'm not way up in his business. There are positions, there are certain stretches that you might need to be there, right? Bend that knee, I come in here. Notice I'm not facing to him or her, depending on who you have on the table, right? I have angles, I'm oblique. I can position myself here to add a stretch. I can position myself here, but the best positions that I can be in are going to be extension, being away, being closed, okay? Anything where we start to go around has the potential to be seen the wrong way, okay? So I can kind of be here, I can be here, but again, I'm in a good postured position, I'm oblique to the client. Questions on any of that? Okay. Anything you would add any of that?
I'll add in with that one to get completely out of that area. You can also take it from this side. Anchor and come across. That way you're not getting in here at all.
Okay. Makes sense to everybody? Good. Okay. If I'm working through a shoulder, the closer I get to the person, the more important it is for me to not be in their personal space. Some of your clients may feel totally comfortable. Most of them probably will. Some of them will have that personal bubble. So either way, just don't fall victim to getting into a zone where you don't know whether or not someone's going to be comfortable in it. So if I'm here, again, I'm very directly extended away from them, right? I'm not grabbing or squeezing. Even my hands kind of rested over the top. I can position my body to support, but I'm not coming in to these close proximity positions, okay? If I'm stretching across, I can certainly come here. Realistically, I can come here, but I don't want to be here, okay? There's time and place for that depending on, like if I'm in an actual massage with someone or a table session, I may need to get them into this position. But again, I'm gonna position myself to make them feel the most comfortable. Out here, there really shouldn't be a big necessity for that.
I will say the times where I lean and the times where it's a hip flexion or a rotational stretch is when I get lazy, is when perception kicks in. And when I lean over and I'm having a conversation or my elbow's in is when I'm tired. And that's when I get to the point of getting close and get into a space. And that's when I am at my lowest, meaning like when Ryan's talking about you get into that individual space. Yes, clients are comfortable with that. Perception on the outside's obviously not. So thinking from an outside source, when I'm looking at it from Ryan, what he's doing from stretch 1 to obviously stretch 2, I get lazy when I get tired, and tired equals lazy. That's when people see, like, why is Mark super close to them? Is he talking in their ear? Is he gossiping? Whatever, those are the things that I realize that I do, but when I'm on point and I'm not tired or I'm not lazy, I'm doing it on point. So those are some things, like for me, that's what I think about right now when I'm super close with a client. It's not meaning like I want to get up in their junk or I want to get close to them. It means that I'm tired, I'm lazy because I've been on my feet all day long. So those are some other points that maybe you guys can think about too, is why am I getting closer to the client? Why am I getting down? Am I just putting my elbow in them because I'm lazy? What is it?
So along that line too, when we'll start talking about utilization of your hands, elbows, knuckles, the only way that we want to use any of that, and this comes into that second period when we're talking about soft tissue work, the only time that I would say we should exploit any part of your body is in a compression and movement type of scenario, attack and floss. So, and this happens sometimes when Mark's talking about, if I'm trying to get into like a glute or an IT band and I want to move them around, right? Then I get in here, like I do this, Mark does this. This inherently is not a bad position. But if I'm in like this is different, okay? And again, we can do this as Messiah said, we can come from the other angle. We can come here, we can move them away from us, and we could use some sort of compression here. But the goal is, all I'm doing here is if I have an area that I believe to be restricted, glute med, glute max, TFL, I'm gonna pin, and then I'm either adding stretch or I'm taking through range of motion. I'm not just here just to say that I'm in the tissue, okay? If I'm just going to hang out on that tissue, I might as well just stretch them. Have the purpose behind what you're using there, okay?
And that right there is one of those cases where you can get really creative with the tools you're using. You can get your gun out and not even have your hand on the glute. You can use the stretch and just use the tool rather than getting your hand right there.
And we talked about that, we talked about this and that a lot before COVID when we first moved in. We did that orientation. We said, exploit the tools.
And the tool is your client too. If you've got a big guy on the table and you're having a hard time stretching them, keeping them on the table, have them grab the table. I've seen a lot of you guys do that, and that's really good to help you get into the stretch. But also, he talks about the verbal and the physical responses. You have to pay attention to their breathing. If they're holding their breath, they're guarding their body. Pay attention to those things too. Sometimes it's not a matter of just getting more aggressive with what you're doing. It's about letting them relax so that it can open up and be more effective and efficient.
And we see this too, the masks are interesting now because when we talk about body reading, if your client is grimacing, right, if they're like biting down or but if they're in the mask, basically all you see is whether or not they're closing their eyes. So being aware tissue-wise, like if I come into something and I see him start to move because that right there is uncomfortable. Is that uncomfortable, Dale?
Yes.
Okay, if I'm here and he's making big motions, that probably is more than I need to present for him to relax into something. Some people's tolerance of deep tissue is much better than other people. If you know that you're in a hurry, I fall victim to this a lot. If I have someone that I'm only on the table for 5 minutes or like I'm super wound up here, I have a tendency to skip past that kind of light and I'll come right in. I'm like, all right, well, let's just get this done real quick. and I'll get in and I'll hammer some compression.
Just real quick, Dale.
Okay? So, that is by far not the best technique. It's one that I've used, but to be fair, the liability falls on me with that because, you know, I have a license that tells me that go ahead, but don't fuck somebody up. So that is not the best way to approach that. Come in, if you're gonna just kind of take them through a roll, and again, we can get creative with the tools that we're using, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But positioning, I need other people to perceive me as not doing something that is painful or exaggerated over what should be done. And that's not, from a harassment or an uncomfortable standpoint, that's not an issue. It's more like, oh, fuck, like, should he really be doing that? If those things are brought into question and someone comes in and said, oh, hey, I saw Scott working on his client and he was like really in a lot of pain and I didn't think that that was right. I mean, the likelihood that someone's going to say that is not high, but it could be seen, right? So you have to make sure that everything that you are doing looks therapeutic. Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So that's the idea of compression with movement. Again, if I am using a tool, let's say I wanted to take, let's say I knew that Dale was super wound up in this medial calf, because I know he has fear in his eyes. I could come in here, right? But what I could do is just take something like this.
That's nice. It's not bad.
This is just, again, it's the same concept, right? I could come in, I could come into this TFL. Now be aware, if you're gonna use something, any one of these tools as a compression device, understand that you don't have that tactile response, right? So if I just kind of shove this in here, I don't know what this feels like from a muscle. Like if you push on something that hurts, you guys can feel that muscle contract, right? If I'm trying to be a little bit more distanced and I'm coming in and doing some sort of a release somewhere, I have to know I have control of this device. If I grab the end of this and I'm just kind of like over here and that slips and hits him right in the business, probably not the best presentation, right? So I want to make sure that I'm set, I have control, but I also look like I'm using something else. Okay? Any other thoughts on stretching or compression? Okay,
No.
so let's talk about movement. If we talk about ideas of gliding techniques, stripping, whatever you want to call it, if I'm coming in and I want to move like through the quad muscle, as a massage therapist, obviously you're trained and are allowed to go through and use whatever tool physically I need. From our standpoint, if we want to go through that, and I know that the calf is usually a really good place for a lot of us to start because people tend to be very wound in the calf. Flip over. I know Dale is. Okay, so I could certainly come in and I could go knuckles and I could go forearm and I can go elbow, but I can get just as much out of using something else. So I can use this little guy, right? And I'm just applying just a little bit of pressure. May not even have to. This guy's like 9 pounds already. And I come in and I can still read his body as I hit areas of discomfort, right? So I can just come in. Again, I'm tall, I'm at an oblique angle, I'm coming in. I can walk into an area where if he's a little wound up there, I can hang there. I could have him do some little ankle motion here. I can do everything that that a massage therapist would do without actually having to have that level of intimacy with that client, okay? The closer we get, this is where we get into kind of this questionable areas, right? closer I am in this region, the closer I am, especially with women up top, the more that gets perceived differently, okay? If I'm in here and I'm facing right at Dale, right down his line, and I'm just working on his calf, no one's gonna look at me and be like, oh, he's like checking out that dude's ass. Some might, but unlikely. But the closer I get, the more I'm like up in here, right? How I present myself, the angles I present myself at begin to look a lot different. So if I'm in here or here versus here, right? Those are different. I don't know if you really want to be this close to somebody pre or post workout anyway. So, and then again, what's your intention, right? If I'm going way up in here, it's because I'm looking to try to get some sort of high hamstring attachment, some sort of deep rotator attachment, something that I'm actually trying to strategically release as a maybe detail work, right? If I'm just working through somebody's hamstring, I probably get plenty out of it working in about to here. Again, I'm behind it. I have my body weight. I'm just shifting my weight forward. I can roll it. This guy's just a little guy, right? I have all sorts of big tools I can use. These are intentionally handled so that you can go through that. Okay? The weighted ones do all the work for you. Like just in that, this thing's 26 pounds. It's sitting right in the center of his calf. I don't have to be here on it. I don't need that. I can just sit here and just easily let it roll through that tissue. Okay, so now here's my question, Chris, because I would probably say that if we're going to do some sort of tack and floss of internal and external rotation of the hip, I would be okay here and even potentially here if the positioning is right, because I feel like you have better control of where you are versus sticking a tool in here. But you guys tell me whether or not you think that that is something that we're going to be okay with.
Where I come from, I'm fine with that. You're adding in the movement, so you're going towards the end goal of, enhanced movement. You're taking them through range by pinning. When you get here, it's important to be aware of where your hand is going to flop and lie, okay? In addition to where your head is going along with that. But again, tools is always a good way to stay away from any of that perception that your hand is getting anywhere that it shouldn't be.
And I haven't addressed the percussion because I figured we'd go through that in its own, but that's a good point to use that as well. If you're going to use, Dale gets really creative on using the ends of these, even though they're handles, in the same fashion that we would use the tip of the boomstick, something like that, where you can come in and you could still set that right into the meat of the glute. For most people, there's not like a magic place I'm seeking out, right? I'm not going to stick it right on their SI joint. I'm not going to stick it on their tailbone. I'm just going to find that meat of the glute. I'm just pressing in. I'm getting some sort of neurological compression on all of that tissue, and then I'm just challenging his range of motion. Okay, so whether you're going here, whether you're going here, I always try to move the hand to the outside of the body rather than here or here. But either way, wherever you're coming in and you're attacking, just be built like that. So position yourself to make it look the most appropriate.
And that's the thing, the way it looks. And what you have to draw the distinction with is what your intention is and what or how it could be perceived. Okay, and what your goal here is not to give anyone a massage. It's to increase their mobility or make them move better. So the more you're adding in movement, whether it is passive or having them go through active ranges, let's say you're using the pain pill on their calf, bring them a little bit further off the table. Have them go through plantar flexion and dorsiflexion while you're just holding it there. You know, they can tell where they're kind of hitting a spot of restriction, and can give you that feedback, and always ask for that feedback. You know, make it a communication as you're going through these things so that you know and the client feels empowered to tell you what is going on with them throughout the entire process.
Okay, cool. Same thing applies obviously to the upper half, especially with women. The more you are, the closer you get to their chesticles, so to speak, closer we are right in the middle, is we're going to end up having a perception that is less appropriate. Flip over for me, Dale. We will say that Dale is a woman. He could be a man after. Okay, so Dale would have no problem with me coming in and doing some sort of compression right here. Okay? But let's say I have Rachel on the table. Right here, from a massage therapy standpoint, from an ethics standpoint, I am in tissue that is not breast tissue. Okay? But if I am in here and I am really close to my client, okay? Or maybe I'm coming in like this, and like Mark was saying, I'm tired and I'm lazy, and I'm just kind of like having a conversation with my client here. Maybe they don't care, but other people will see that that looks like I'm like this, right? Anytime that we are making motion in an area that is some sort of intimate site, we have to present it as distal, as far from that area as possible to accomplish what we're trying to get. Yes, people are wound up through here, right? The tissue that is through the pec and up into these subclavius stuff, that stuff is super wound up. But unless you think someone is just locked down, restricted, I don't know that you have to do a compression movement here. Do something.
If you feel like you do, have them do it themselves. Give them a myofascial release ball and have them go up against the wall. Have them move over to the side of the table. Move over this way. Let gravity give you a little bit more range into that stretch. Okay? Tools are beyond just these things here. We can use any kinds of tools around here, including gravity. Let gravity, let the edge of the table grant you a little bit more range. There's a lot of things you can do to avoid getting into an area that could be perceived as being inappropriate.
Question from the table. So let's say I've got somebody who's lacking the ability to lift. Is it an issue when I'm placing cups and then using the cups from that posture distant position to try and move up, essentially, right? I'm grabbing and coming through, but with the cup, is there an issue there, first of all, in placement, right? Let's say I'm like real close to the bra strap, potentially having to get half of the cup underneath it, and then if I have a series of cups where I'm pulling those into this motion, is there an issue of perception there?
Communication.
Yeah, I think it's both communication and your body position. So let's say you have a client, she's in a tank top, right? And you were to come in, that tank top's gonna run here. You know that you're addressing everything outside of that. So if you're coming in, I would honestly say, and again, this is me probably overthinking this meticulously, but a cup where you are having some sort of a suction versus you taking these ones and kind of being right here,
Yeah.
I think would perceive itself slightly different. Obviously, like if you're in a session or if I'm in a session in a room, that's a very, very subtle difference that probably shouldn't matter. But if you're looking and you're doing a lot of like this type of detail work, it probably is more uncomfortable to the client or to someone outside versus having something that is just a distance tool.
That is the downside of those rock pots that I found, is like, it's not.
And they are designed for a basic compression, right? You can bring them on and just push them in, but they don't always adhere. That's the lightest pressure, right? These ones just tend to be, sometimes you can lose these in motion. That's one downside, but if I have
If
good
you-
placement,
And if you use an oil or a lubricant, you're gonna get a better,
Yeah.
you better stick to that. And if you're really concerned about it, you don't really have to move that cup at all. Move the arm. Put the cup on and go hands off in the area, you know, cause that's what you're using it for anyway, is to get away from that perception of inappropriate touch.
Right.
Put the cup on, the cup is doing the work there, and then take the arm through the range to get that shearing of the layers of tissue that you're trying to look for your release.
same thing, same concept with the scraping tool, okay? If I'm gonna be in this area, right, I'm probably not gonna come in like this, right? I'm gonna use something more like one of these longer pieces and come in, and I can go in and use this type of motion where I have some distance to get into that position. Does that make sense to everybody? Good with you?
Awesome.
Okay, so questions on how to systematically stretch, questions on body positioning. Okay. He had a good point. Thank you very much, Messiah.
Thanks, Chris.
Our intention is not to help your client relax after a long day. They can book a massage for that. It's very easy to kind of get into a comfortable conversation with your client. Maybe you're just doing some compression, or you're doing some sort of like triceps wound up, and you want to just get in, you know, like you would give your girlfriend a massage, and you want to just kind of rub that muscle. That is not our intention here. Our intention here is to give them freedom of motion. This, or this, right, or this, is not in the sense of trying to improve mobility any different technique-wise than actually going through with some sort of compression or some sort of tack and floss. Okay? So, keep that in mind. Here's the other thing. You may have clients that ask you for those things, right? Oh, God, I've had this multiple times. My shoulders are so tight. Can you just rub my shoulders?
I was gonna say with the neck, like a lot of clients with the neck stuff, they want you to get in there, and every once in a while I'll get underneath, have them hang off, and just kind of get a little
Okay,
traction.
so all that is positioning and perception. I can come in at this angle, right? And I can take Dale and I can take him to one side, and I can put him in this sort of a stretch, right? That's some trap. I could even come in here and place this right against the trap, take him through some motion. This is accomplishing basically the same thing as me coming in and rubbing on their trap. Okay? It's dumb to think that this is the case, but it is the case. The more that you are making contact with somebody, the more it's going to give the wrong perception. Okay? So if I am fixed, it is less than this. Right? Why? Just is what it is. Right? My goal is just simply to give this person the freedom to be able to move, or just unwind them a little bit when they're done. So I don't need to put them into that situation. I don't need to put myself into that situation. Okay. Let's finish off with the idea of percussion guns. Okay, we have 3. We do have 4 tables because we have a new table, but we have 3 guns. Okay? It is rare that we have every one of those tables full and somebody using a percussion gun. I save everybody because I very rarely use these. Okay? But it's not because I don't think they have validity. I like the tactile feel of how somebody's moving underneath. If I am using this, I have two settings, fast and slow for the top button. Slow is always going to be tolerated more. So if I have someone where I know Dale's super wound up here, right here, and I go immediately into this like really aggressive dig, he's going to react negatively, right? Even at this speed, if I come in and I let the percussion gun do the work, that is much more tolerable. Yeah? If that's too much, I can take the speed down. After, if you're working in an area, they're like, maybe they pull the quad or something, and you want to really spend some time here, you could spend some time lighter, and then as they get comfortable, you can push in a little bit. But what you're looking for is body language. Not okay? Okay.
The eyes.
Okay?
Not okay with me?
Not okay?
Okay.
Maybe you handled that one.
Yep.
Okay. Now, where is this okay and where is it not okay? This region
Never.
and this region. Even if you're kind of getting like, I want to get to this sub-scap, right? This sucks. Because it's right on the bone, okay? Doesn't mean you can't get into this tissue here. Example, if Dale's talking about his client, he's trying to get into this overhead position, and they will tend to be locked down through the lateral subscap, I can just come in with a nice light compression here, take them through their range of motion. If he's missing a little bit of that internal, I think maybe he's a little tight top. Right at the shoulder attachment, I'm positioning myself at distance, and I'm working into a range of motion. Trap, here's another great tool if you have someone that's, oh, my traps are super tight. Come in, set that thing right on the trap. Take them through a range of motion. Take the head through a range of motion. Okay?
The only thing I noticed with the gun is it
Gets itchy.
Yeah.
And also,
irritating.
even if you're in a reasonably good zone, you may have people talk like they're like, ooh, like it's uncomfortable. It's like rattling my intestines. Okay? So, again, the biggest thing that you will learn, that we learned from the different rock tape workshops, is there is a tool for everything. Okay? If I'm working through glute, or if I'm working through IT band, or working through adductor, this is probably not the spot to be working the gut, right? I'm here, that sucks already. Will be nice to go.
It tickles.
It tickles, and then this starts to get weird, right? It sucks, and yet it also has like a weird,
Nervous sensation.
yeah.
A
So,
lot.
again, there is time to play. Certainly, you could spend time right here. Distal quad, adductor attachments, you could get about halfway up. That sucks, but it's not. So understand what your client feels. Communication. God, that it really just, it's uncomfortable. Okay, let's try something else. Okay. I always default to, can I get them to feel better with a basic stretch right out the gate? It's a hell of a lot less work for me to just take someone through a nice range of motion if they're stretching. And not really have to hammer the tissue. If I have someone, Margie's a good example, who is like hamstring flexibility for days, but has a super wound up hamstring, then the tissue modalities are going to be a better bet. Because she's getting range of motion out of somewhere, but she's wound up. Okay? Communicate with your client. Interpret what their need is, and then apply it in a professional manner.
Or those, my clients that have sciatic issues, the gun right on the glute is irritating.
And you'll see that a lot of times with compression too. If you dig right into that piriformis area with someone that has sciatic nerve, it doesn't always make it better.
Yeah.
You're pushing down on the nerve, but some dynamic stretching. This is the, we can get into some education stuff down the line where we're talking specifically on how to stretch and treat certain things, but nerve stuff is a lot about dynamic motion. Nerve flossing. Stretching and relaxing, you're activating and deactivating the nerve, you're allowing them, that nerve, to acknowledge what it is to go back and forth in and out of range of motion. Questions on anything table-wise?
Well, I was just gonna say that like all that table stuff, body position can also easily be applied to like our position to our clients on the floor. Like everything, you know, except
Max and I had this conversation yesterday, right?
Small woman.
So,
how the-
I mean, in general, it's the thing. So if he was looking at Sue's squat, okay, and I told him to look around the squat, right, see it, and he ended up in the front, looking, which I look at positioning from the, and then he's like going in here to make corrections.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
My bad.
Well, and again, it's not, I mean, you were observing, you were positioning yourself, right? Oblique positioning, and this, it all depends, right? If I have someone, if we're in here on Fridays, and someone's lifting a 1 to 3 rep max,
Yeah.
I might have 3 people spotting that person. But if it's just me, then yeah, I'm gonna be in here, Max is squatting, I'm gonna be right in here, okay?
What are the time and place?
But the other thing is, depending on where I am from a spotting position on bench or where I am on a spotting position on the row or something, the more oblique I can position myself to the client and get myself to where I can support or assist that person rather than having to try to control the implement. But extended position, controlled support, any of those zones that you can get into to make yourself appear as professional as possible, and that perception comes from your client as well. If you see someone kind of, like if you're working with a new client, and you see them kind of like moving back from something you're doing, they may not say anything and they may think it's perfectly appropriate, but they're now weird about it. Okay? So, acknowledge that. Be reading on how your client is responding to where you are positioned. And then we get, and this is, we have a little time, so let's talk about this too. Come on up, Dale. When we talk about tactile cueing, okay, or spotting, there is a difference in kind of intention with how I'm doing that as well. So, Max, why don't you be my squatter again? And it's not always about inappropriate, it's more about like how you're trying to get that feedback to your client. So Max is squatting and his right knee is dropping in. Your right knee is dropping in. There you go. Come back up. So if I come in and I'm just like, okay, push this out. Push this out right here. Okay? For people that can't see that because I'm right behind you. So I'm just like, okay, push this right here. Right? It's hesitant, it's kind of weirdly stroking. Okay? My intention is to give him feedback. So, I am always one about firm pressure and contact and maintaining, right? Okay, this knee is dumping. All right, push into me here. Push, 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 push. I'm not pushing him in, but I have good contact here to let him know. Okay? If someone is dumping their shoulders, maybe a seated row, do a seated row. Get to mimic it. Then you're sitting. You do a row.
Standing row.
Okay. Do a, just pretend. There's a pulley right there, you're rowing. Row. Do a row.
Oh.
God damn it. Just pull your hands towards your body.
Stand up. You're fine.
Okay, so if he is dumping his shoulder now, right? I don't want to be here and be like, okay, right here, right here. I'm gonna set myself, scat, shoulder, okay? Drop. Pressure, pressure. Give them the feedback to know where they're going. All right? Head position. Hey, put this, lift this up to me. Lift this up to me. That's nice. Did you use your brush today?
I did not.
Oh, okay. So, head position. Right here, push into me. Tuck your chin a little bit, tuck. Good, get long here, get long. Give them enough feedback that it feels like you're right there. If you're spotting them, okay, here we go. Here we go. Right? Right? Versus like, okay. Go. Go. Right? Intention with your hands gives them the feedback to know that they are in good hands, so to speak. Right? And it also feels like there is intention to correct. Make sense?
Ever since I started squatting, like, or using the dowel to get people's spine alignment too, I can use that and, just do people from a distance as well. And
Yeah.
you can prod them and stuff if they're not doing it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it literally just takes being like, okay, just awareness to it, right? Boom. Dump, dump, boom. I come up and I give clients this all the time. Middle back, middle back, middle back. Awareness. You're just bringing their awareness somewhere. Oh, that's what I'm
And you
supposed
can keep, well, you can keep them one arm's distance, and you
Yeah.
can stay, and then, unless you're spotting somebody at 3 to 1 rep max like we were talking about, right? You can be abreast in almost every one of these situations where you're standing on the side and not directly in front of or behind them.
Right.
Like we do a lot of split stance stuff, right? So when you're tuning people in like the split squat, it's easy enough to posture yourself and be aware of the stuff where you're not inside the front leg, you're outside the front leg. And then we have the bands and different stuff where you can cue, you can give those different directions where you're having them resist, where you don't necessarily have to use your hands or your hip.
Okay, here's a great example. Lie on your back. We do a hip bridge. Okay. Hip bridges by themselves are already interpreted weird. Okay? Do you know what a frog hip bridge is?
Frog pump.
Frog pump.
Yeah.
Makes it
Pump
even
those
sound
frogs
worse,
and
right?
let's find out.
Put your feet together.
You want to learn?
Open your knees as far as you can. Do a hip bridge. This alone
Yes, sir. Hold that.
can by itself be perceived as awkward, right? What are we doing with this motion? External rotation and extension. It's exactly what the glute max does. It is its absolute intention. So, if I have someone that is just not figuring out how to get their glute to fire, this might be a great tool, okay? They don't know how to squeeze the glute. Okay, so, all of a sudden I am now here, in this position, right? In them in this position. Okay, relax. So, the likelihood that this is going to be perceived as wrong may not be that high. But if I am intending to be them, I'm going to be in the most comfortable position for everyone. So I'm not going to go here. Go ahead, give me that pump, pump. And then I'm not going to come under here and be like, fire these right here. Okay? So, I'm going to move myself obliquely. I'm going to move more to his center line. Okay, drive the hips. I might cue his abs. Right? See, you've got a lot of extension here. I might cue his abs first. And then, I'm not going to come in real light and be like, fire. I'm going to come in. I'm going to push. Right there. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. It's not inherently a bad movement for me to touch someone's butt. But if I go in there and it's kind of like, hey, just turn this on, right?
Yeah, have it.
Versus just giving them a little bit of tactile cueing. Boom. If you're at a distance and you see something, and you have someone doing this move and you've got that, you're like, right there, cue. Good. All you're doing is bringing their awareness to the area. You pushing on them does not make their butt fire. Okay? Questions or anything else that we need to look at from that standpoint? Everyone feels comfortable with that?
Yeah.
You have questions?
Are you
Good?
comfortable now?
Good? Good?
I can take it out.
Good? Okay. So, we will have this if anyone wants to readdress it. This will be part of our protocol if we onboard new people so they have an understanding of it. Kurt, next week we are going to have Tara for our tennis player case study.
The week after that, we might be able to get Camilla. She's
Right, we were going to do Camilla next week because we had Kurt person this week, but then we pushed everything to week
Yeah.
12.
yeah.
And then I was thinking maybe Josh.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say that, but Josh is,
And then if we have a week where we don't fill a case study, then let's talk about some different stretching techniques and
Yeah, I want to learn
release
about cupping
techniques
and stuff.
and the cupping. And I think that will be a good transition for us to kind of add more tools to the table. Paul?
Thanks, Steve.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, very good.
That's not what we're talking about.